Huge amounts of radioactive substances were released into the atmosphere by the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear accident 3 years ago. Now, disposing of the contaminated waste is a major challenge. Parts of the Kanto and Tohoku regions are directly affected by the problem. The contaminated waste includes ash from incinerated trees and grass, sludge from sewage disposal plants, and bundles of rice straw that were outdoors when the accident happened. The people in charge still don't know where to put the waste. The government is planning final disposal facilities in each of the affected prefectures to store waste exceeding a specific level of radioactivity. But people in the towns and cities being considered for these facilities are staunchly opposed. They're afraid of the stigma and potential environmental hazard.
We'll give back all the radioactive waste to those responsible for it at Tokyo Electric Power Company.
How do we find a solution that all the parties can agree on? Today we report on the search for answers in managing fallout from the 2011 nuclear plant disaster.
Welcome to today's close-up. I'm Hiroko Kuniya. How would you react to having a final disposal site for radioactive waste located close to your home? Massive amounts of radioactive substances were released from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, contaminating a wide area of eastern Japan. Disposing of the radioactive waste is a major undertaking. The Environment Ministry designates special radioactive waste for storage if it exceeds 8,000 becquerels per kilogram. The waste is also organized into categories such as incinerated ash, sewage sludge, rice straw, and grass and wood. The government requires specialized disposal of this waste if the level of radiation exceeds the designated level. The 5 prefectures of Tochigi, Chiba, Ibaraki, Miyagi, and Gunma have relatively large amounts of radioactive waste designated for storage. The government says it aims to collect it, incinerate it, and put the incinerated ash into bags. It will then store the bags in concrete at final disposal sites. The government wants to build one final storage facility in each of the 5 prefectures. For Miyagi, 3 locations have been proposed as candidates, but strong opposition from residents is holding things up. People are asking why they should host the final disposal sites. They're concerned about the impact on their local economies and on future generations. And they're angry. They say the government is going ahead with the plan without discussing who should take responsibility for the legacy of the nuclear accident. We looked at why the plan is so upsetting for the people in these communities.
In Miyagi Prefecture, government representatives, the prefectural governor, and the heads of candidate towns and cities. They all came together last Monday to discuss the building of a final disposal facility.
We want to take steps toward finding a solution to the problem with the kind cooperation of the municipalities and communities concerned. Thank you.
The government wants to start building the facility as soon as possible, but it's still not able to secure the consent of the municipalities. The delay in choosing sites for final disposal is taking a heavy toll on the farms and public waste temporarily. This water purification plant in Shiroishi, Miyagi Prefecture is one of those places. Water from a nearby dam storage was treated at the plant immediately after the nuclear accident. This produced large amounts of radioactive sludge. The plant is still holding about 500 tons of the sludge. It contains more than 8,000 becquerels per kilogram of radioactive substances, which classifies it as special radioactive waste.
The waste is being stored here and in 3 other makeshift buildings over there.
Workers at the sewage facility frequently measure radiation levels at the plant. The radiation level at this spot, 3 meters away from the stored waste, is less than 0.23 microsieverts per hour. That's below the government limit requiring decontamination. The level almost doubles as you get closer.
Here it measures 0.5 of a microsievert per hour.
The workers are concerned about leakage and are asking for early removal of the waste.
We're nervous about it all the time. We can't keep the contaminated waste here forever. We'd like the people in charge to do something soon.
Some people are living virtually side by side with the waste. Contaminated rice straw is usually stored at farms. Rice straw produces gases as it decomposes. This could result in a leak of radioactive substances.
I'd like the contaminated straw removed from my land as soon as possible. I and my neighbors are constantly on edge.
In January, the central government chose 3 sites as candidates for a disposal plant, from lands it owned or the prefectural government's owned. But the people living near those sites staged a rigorous campaign against it.
All the land around here is a candidate site for building a final disposal facility.
One of the sites is Mount Fukushima Daiichi in the city of Kurihara. The area is known as geologically unstable due to volcanic activity. One of the world's biggest landslides took place just 2 kilometers from the site, when a major earthquake struck Ueta and Miyagi prefectures in 2008.
The land around here is quite unstable. I wonder why they chose it as a candidate site. I wonder if they really examined its geological features.
People living near another candidate site say it will seriously affect their livelihoods. Toyoji Ichijo runs an organic farm in Kami near one of the sites. He mainly grows rice.
These are all my organic rice paddies, here, around my house.
But he saw a major drop in sales following the Fukushima accident, even though no radioactivity was observed in the region. Consumers shun rice grown in Miyagi Prefecture because it's next to Fukushima. Poor sales again last year forced Ichijo to reduce the area that he plants to 1/5 of what he used to. He fears sales will decline further if a final disposal facility is built nearby.
No one wants that kind of facility in their backyard. We can't let construction go ahead. No way.
Construction is now at a standstill for a variety of reasons. The government faces similar problems in other prefectures. 2 years ago, the government announced it had selected the city of Ueta in Tochigi Prefecture, northern Kanto region, as a candidate for a disposal plant.
Excuse me for coming at such short notice. I'd like to report on a government plan.
But Ueta's mayor refused to cooperate with the central government. He said he could not make residents accept a plan that had just come out of the blue.
I'm quite surprised and perplexed by the abruptness of this proposal.
The government then announced the city of Takahagi as the candidate site in Ibaraki Prefecture. That city also refused to cooperate. Government officials failed to win the consent of the two municipalities, partly because they selected candidate sites behind closed doors. After firm refusals from both cities, the government was forced to review the way it chooses potential sites. The government selected sites in Miyagi after revamping their original approach. They began the selection process, meeting with local mayors 5 times over a period of 1.5 years. They agreed to exclude areas containing important cultural sites and those with a higher risk of natural disaster. 3 sites were chosen as candidates.
We held many meetings with the mayors and decided there on the selection method and criteria. The government hopes to choose a site for final disposal from among these 3 candidates.
But the new process has failed so far to help the government gain public support. Residents say they're not convinced by the government's explanation.
Apparently, some of the communities that benefited from having the nuclear power plant are now uninhabitable. The radioactive waste should be taken there.
Why is the government trying to exploit the weak like us? Tokyo Electric Power Company is responsible. They should accept the waste. To break the stalemate, the government offered in April to provide grants totaling $50 million. Still, there is no sign that disposal facilities will be built in the 5 prefectures anytime soon.
Joining me in the studio is Kyoto University Professor Kazuhiro Ueta, an expert in waste management. Professor Ueta, final disposal sites for radioactive waste won't be built anytime soon, but communities storing the waste on a temporary basis are shouldering a heavy burden.
Yes, as we saw in the report, temporary storage is not recommended because it carries a huge risk. What if a tornado hit a storage site? But moving the radioactive waste around is also risky. So I think it's reasonable to build final disposal facilities, put the waste there, and manage it properly.
Residents of candidate sites are frustrated with the government trying to build disposal facilities in their communities. What's behind this concern?
They must be feeling that radioactive waste should not be brought close to their homes because they think they're already victims of the nuclear accident. Their land was contaminated by the fallout. They're probably offended by the government plan. I suppose they have a point. In their eyes, there are people other than themselves who should be taking responsibility for the accident and its aftermath.
The central government unilaterally chose prospective sites in Tochigi and Ibaraki, and this drew criticism from local leaders. So before choosing those sites in Miyagi, it had 5 meetings with local mayors. But the government is still facing opposition.
Leaders in Tochigi and Ibaraki opposed the plan because the decision-making process was in a black box. In Miyagi, the government gave a small presentation on risk assessment to show local leaders some of the criteria for choosing sites. In a sense, the selection process became a bit more scientific. The government can say it has chosen sites that have the fewest risks. This looks at first glance like an improvement. But as I said, the government has failed to answer the people of Miyagi about who should be taking responsibility in the first place. People must be feeling that there's a way to choose disposal sites that's more socially fair. But the government seems to be focusing only on minimizing risk and imposing its plan. That's why residents are opposing it.
What should be the top priority in setting the criteria?
It depends who you ask. One would choose a location with the smallest risk, while another would say the risk should be shared. Yet another might say the people with primary responsibility for the accident should accept the risk. I think the plan to build disposal sites is stalled because all the parties concerned have not had thorough discussions about the fairest way to share the risks.
Some in the video said the waste should be sent to communities that benefited from the nuclear plant, or to those that are now uninhabitable. They are probably wondering why they have to accept the waste.
Right. The government is proposing grants to communities that agree to host disposal facilities. Residents must be worried that the current selection method focused on risks is forcing the weakest communities to host the facilities.
Professor Ueta, thank you. The plan to build final disposal facilities is still facing staunch opposition, but some opponents are changing their approach to the issue.
December 2012. Residents in Chiba Prefecture tried to block trucks bringing highly contaminated ash into their district. The incident took place at a sewage treatment facility at Lake Tega, straddling the cities of Abiko and Inzai. The prefecture designated an empty lot at the facility as an interim storage site for highly radioactive waste. This drew angry protests from residents. "526 tons are being stored here. None of it originates locally. It was brought in from the 3 surrounding cities." Originally, the special radioactive waste was supposed to be stored temporarily in the municipality it came from. But the 3 cities soon ran out of space for the massive amounts of contaminated waste building up after the disaster. The prefectural government permitted transfer of some of the waste to the Lake Tega sewage facility. Hiromitsu Kobayashi has been leading the residents' protest.
You may be able to see the yellow radiation symbol over there. That's where the special waste is stored.
Kobayashi's group continued protesting for 6 months, and their effort bore fruit. No waste has been brought in since last June.
The problem should have stayed in the town where it originated. Instead, they take it to someone else's home without asking and just leave it there. That's really infuriating.
But Kobayashi says that after they succeeded in blocking the waste, they've had time to think, and their mindset has changed a bit. Instead of just demanding that the waste be taken away, they now see it as their problem too, and they're discussing how to resolve it.
The leaflet says Chiba is in trouble and needs to make a decision as soon as possible.
Their topmost concern now is a final disposal site for the waste. They've learned that the central government will soon announce a potential site in Chiba. Once that's decided, the waste stored here will finally be gone. But Kobayashi and others have mixed feelings about it.
We became an interested party when the waste was brought here. Maybe we wouldn't have given it any thought at all if the waste had been taken 20 kilometers away. I don't want people elsewhere to suffer like this.
Every municipality should accept a small share of the risk of storing the waste. That'll give people time to think about the issue more thoroughly. The residents now feel that just getting the waste off their hands won't solve the problem. They think everyone should get involved in debating the issue with the same urgency felt by residents in the vicinity of the storage site.
I think the friction stemmed from the way decisions were made from the top down. They give the order and say their method is cheaper or easier to manage. But this problem can't be settled through reason alone. The important thing is not just choosing a disposal site. The government should consider how things really should be done and come up with a plan that all the residents can live with.
People expressed mixed feelings about the fact that while they'd be rid of the waste, the problem wouldn't be solved. What's your take on this?
They've made a very important point here. Nobody wants the waste near their home. It's only natural that they feel that way. All the more so if it didn't originate there. But when we ask ourselves, is the problem solved if it's out of our hands? The answer is no. It's just gone somewhere else. A true resolution will only come when we all take an interest and get involved. Each of us needs to consider where the waste should go and how we should go about making that decision. The residents apparently came to that realization.
Selection of final disposal sites is just one step in dealing with the massive negative legacy of the nuclear disaster. What is the key to making a choice that is convincing for all of us?
Well, I was struck by one resident's comment. He said they've already become an interested party. The question is, who should ultimately be responsible for the disposal of contaminated waste? And how should it be done? It's an undeniable fact that we must all take on a share of the burden. The important thing is the process of deciding the who, where, and how of final disposal.
The process.
Yes, I think it's of crucial importance to establish a forum for debate on the issue. Everyone should consider it his or her own problem and join in the discussion as an interested party. It's a process that has great significance.
Isn't it more common practice abroad to involve citizens in a debate in working towards a decision?
Yes, environmental assessment in the US would be a good example. The matter is put to rigorous debate. They don't just discuss the pros and cons of a certain plan. Alternative plans are always presented before the best one is adopted. And they'll keep asking whether there isn't an even better plan. Healthy debate brings better ideas. It will be significant if a forum can be established for this problem.
There hasn't been much of that going on in Japan.
Japanese people may not be used to the idea yet, but I think we're heading in that direction. I think we have to.
Thank you very much.